Christmas Eve service was always wonderful at the Holler Holiness Church. Sister Hazel Butter was in charge of the choir. She was the wife of Pastor Woodrow Butter. Them folks practiced since summer on the songs they sang on Christmas Eve. The church was decorated just right, and aromatic cedar Christmas trees were trimmed and lighted to get everyone in the mood. Brother Woodrow reminded folks the reason for the season in a short 5-minute message at the end of the singing. Miss Hazel invited Uncle Billy Gilbert to come over to her house for Christmas dinner. She had done set her hopes on Uncle Billy since Aunt Dell died. Everyone but Miss Hazel knew that were a lost cause. He thanked her, but said he was going to stay home. Other folks invited him without the hidden desires of Miss Hazel. He smiled and turned them down, too. He told folks old Dog needed company tomorrow. Of course, they invited old Dog to come along, but Uncle Billy Gilbert just smiled again and said, no. Christmas morning in Beloved was glorious. There was just enough snow in the little town to make a white Christmas like a greeting card. Annie Pankey's store, called Pankey's Hankies, had the window lighted. Her Santa collection called to hearts young and old to stop and look. Beloved Baptist Church had its bells a-playing Christmas carols quietly all morning. Folks that lived in town got out and swept the sidewalks just as an excuse to visit with each other. The wonderful smells of Christmas dinners cooking filled the mountain air. Up in the holler, Uncle Billy and old Dog got up early as usual. He put a pot of coffee on, that is, after he let old Dog out. He sliced a piece of fruit cake that his son Bill sent him. It was laced with rum, but I'm not telling. Bill tried to get him to come up north for Christmas. He declined graciously. He just wished Bill would come home one Christmas and spend Christmas Day with him. He stirred the fire when he got up and then added some coal to make it burn long and slow. Some folks didn't like the smell of a coal fire, but Uncle Billy Gilbert knew the smell was the heart of the hills. Coal was the heart, the lifeblood, and the burden of the mountains. Later in the morning, him and old Dog dozed in front of the fire. He planned on going for a walk up in the hills sometime during the afternoon, but there was plenty of day left for that. All around Beloved, folks were celebrating Christmas with their families. Customs were a little different, but the basics were the same. Family, cheer, the joy of giving, and little ones gathered close to see what Santa left. Meals were served and bellies filled as the day passed all too quickly. Belts slipped to the next notch, and quite a few folks sat and dozed, while company droned on about work, family, or the common woes of life. Hap Letford sat for a while studying on something after an early Christmas dinner. Evelyn could tell something was on his mind, and she asked him what was in his head. Finally he said, "Would you mind if I didn't help with the dishes and went down to take Uncle Billy a little plate of something?" "My goodness, Hap, I was waiting for you to ask. I have a basket ready for you to take." I baked him a loaf of sourdough bread like he likes and sliced him a couple of pounds of that country ham. You know how he likes them country hams he cures, but won't hardly keep one for himself. You go on and spend some time with him. Tell him we all love him. Hap grinned as Evelyn walked from the kitchen with a basket filled with bread, country ham, and some of her prize-winning strawberry jelly. He thought Evelyn didn't see him stop by the shed and put a quart jar of his elderberry wine in the box, but she was standing inside the door watching through the window, grinning like a possum over roadkill. At that same time, Roscoe Collins was sitting by his wood stove in the chair Uncle Billy had made him back in the summer. Roscoe swore that them store-bought chairs just didn't feel near as good as a chair Uncle Billy crafted. He wondered out loud what Uncle Billy was doing on Christmas Day. With that, Rhoda was out of the kitchen through the covey of grandkids and looking at him with her dark black eyes. "Why don't you get out of that chair and go see? You know the chair I mean, Roscoe? The one you asked Uncle Billy to make? The one he would not take a dime for?" It didn't take him long to get his coat and head for the door. Rhoda handed him a grocery bag filled with turkey, oyster dressing, and half of the stacked cake she made. That cake was wonderful, 7 layers with jam between each layer. For good measure, she sent Uncle Billy a whole vinegar pie. Men need a little sweetening this time of year. And Henry K. Snoddy didn't need no prodding at their place on Bear Rump Creek. Orvina and him had planned for this visit. Orvina hadn't slept well, so she begged out and sent Henry K. with some fried chicken, city ham, sweet potato casserole, and a big bowl of homegrown greasy beans. Uncle Billy gave her the seeds for them beans. Doc Collins was already on the road, as was Junebug Burns and his daddy. Each had boxes and bags of holiday treats. Junebug had made tater candy and fudge with his mama and made sure that most of it went to Uncle Billy, 'cause Uncle Billy had never told on him for swiping Miss Hazel's prize-winning tomatoes. By the time Junebug got there, the big living room of Uncle Billy's house was near full of men and boys, all on an errand of love on Christmas. Uncle Billy answered the door, and his faded blue eyes filled with tears as he saw Junebug standing with an open container of tater candy. "Thought you might want a little of my candy I made," Junebug grinned. "Get in here, boy, or I'll be a-tellin' on you." Uncle Billy had opened all the boxes, bowls, and covered plates as he placed them on the table. He got out every plate and saucer he had, along with all the forks, knives, and spoons in the house. He spoke loudly. "Fellers, I know I can't eat all this before it goes bad. Now, y'all are going to have to help me before I let you leave. Henry K. I'll vouch for you with Orvina, so you just stay right there. Now, if you boys don't mind, I better say a word of grace." The men and boys stood, took off caps and hats, and bowed their heads. "Lord, I thank you much for the fellers that came away from hearth and home to bring some Christmas cheer to this old servant of yours. They humble me, Father, with their love. The wives, mamas, and families they left at home to stop by here fill my heart right good with their generous spirit. Of course, Lord, these is mountain folks, and you expect no less from us. Now I thank ye for the food, the love shown to each other, and the men that stand here shoulder to shoulder. We've all stood beside each other before, baling hay, putting up tobacco, bowing heads in church or lodge. This is my family, Lord. I am humbled and blessed by their sorry old hides. Amen. Oh, and Lord, keep Henry K. out of hot water with Orvina for staying so long. Amen." Men and boys grinned through their tears, the tears that Uncle Billy's prayer brought. They lined up, oldest first, down through the young'uns, and took plates and feasted, as only men gathered together can do. No one noticed that Uncle Billy waited till every single guest was served before he went to the cupboard and got a bowl. Every saucer and plate was used. He filled his bowl with a little of everything, not wanting to hurt anybody's feelings. When he went into the big room, no one had to get out of Uncle Billy's chair. Them fellas just knew it was his and saved it for him. Old Dog was laying by it, tail a-thumping as Uncle Billy sat. That dog knew that Christmas dinner was going to be fed to him, one scrap at a time, by Uncle Billy's hand. Old Dog had trained him that way. There is nothing better than men gathered together to eat, laugh, and talk. That old cabin hadn't heard as much joy in a while. Uncle Billy sat and grinned as he just listened and watched each face. It was a good Christmas. He wished his Dell were there, and a secret tear fell down his cheek when no one noticed. There was a knock at the door, and Junebug went to answer. A covered dish was left on the porch in front of the door, and Junebug saw Miss Hazel's car driving away. He took the dish and the note with it to Uncle Billy. The note said, "Bill, I just know you were forgotten and lonely in that cold, empty cabin. Here's a little something to fill your sad, empty belly. Don't be too proud to stop in later tonight for a visit." Uncle Billy grinned. He hated to be called Bill. His name was Billy, given to him by his daddy. Miss Hazel never would understand. He was alone since Aunt Dell died, but never lonely. He was never sad and obviously could never be forgotten by all the folks that loved him. The cabin wasn't cold or empty, nor was his heart. It was filled with gladness of a life well spent. Doc Collins came over about then and started on a hunting story. Uncle Billy knew he would have to put in his 2 cents about that story. Men and boys gathered closer as their grand old storyteller cleared his throat and said, "Now, Daw, you laughed out what happened with you in that story. Here is how I remember it." There was a warm glow from the windows of that cabin that night, a warm glow inside as men and boys stayed late into the night.